Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining our virtual book tour kickoff for our book, which is publishing February 15th of this year. It's called User Tested: How the World's Top Companies Use Human Insight to Create Great Experiences. As you listen in, feel free to comment, add your questions. We're happy to address those. We'll do that towards the end after we have a chance to review them. With that, my name is Janelle Estes. I'm the Chief Insights Officer at UserTesting, and I'm one of the co-authors for the book User Tested.
And I'm Andy MacMillan. I worked with Janelle on the book as the other co-author. I'm the CEO at UserTesting. And we want to start off maybe just by talking a little about like why we wrote the book and maybe a little bit about why we're the people that wrote the book. And I think a lot of it for us was about this idea that I experienced when I joined UserTesting 4 years ago that as a product person, someone who came up through product management and worked in enterprise software, sort of this realization of we build so many products that don't have our users at the center historically as an industry. And it's just such an important topic. And I think companies are realizing that their users are so critically important, not just tech companies, but all companies as they build more different products and different experiences. But it's a challenge to say, how do you do that? How do you get folks into this process? And one of the things that really struck me when I joined UserTesting was there's this whole industry of people who have been focused on this. And I met Janelle as part of joining the company, and Janelle's got a background. I'll let her talk a little bit about her background. But as somebody who's run big product lines and been into the software development space, it was sort of really illuminating to listen to folks like Janelle talk about how this can be done. And we started talking about how do you sort of take this capability and sort of get a whole organization aligned around it and sort of make it the heart of what a product is all about. And I thought that was really compelling. And we've been sort of talking about this for a while and focused on how we do that in our own product line. And we realized it's not just about the product itself. It's really about the ideas behind it and how people go do it. And that was maybe part of the impetus. I don't know, Janelle, maybe from your perspective, a little bit about, why us and why this book?
Yeah, I mean, I think you make a great point. It's sort of a really interesting combination of both our experiences and skill sets that kind of came together to create this. As you mentioned, I've been doing this forever. And by this, I mean, talking to customers, focusing in on customer experience and user experience. And, having spent over 7 years at user testing, and before that, many years at Nielsen Norman Group, actually doing a lot of this work, I've learned a ton. I've learned a lot about best practices, but more specifically, I've learned a lot about how all different companies do this, and being able to share that perspective, to share really compelling case studies and approaches and ways to do this at scale, at the speed of business today, is something that we both feel passionate about. As someone who's been in the industry for decades now, being at user testing and being able to use technology to solve this problem is fascinating, and is something that I've been able to experience firsthand in my career. For years, we were sitting in actual labs in places like New York City and other cities to actually bring people in from the company, bring in your customers, talk to them, have people behind glass sitting and observing, and spending weeks pulling together that entire engagement. And being able to do this within hours using technology is really, quite frankly, totally changed the way that companies do this. And so it's been fascinating to be part of this ride as part of my career. And I feel really fortunate to be able to share this perspective, what I've learned, and what we've seen to be best practices in the book itself.
Yeah, I think, as I said, I think also just the opportunity to take some of the things we've seen that companies have done that work so well and share those best practices too. I mean, there are some companies that do this really well, and there are others that are still sort of aspiring to learn to do it really well. So I thought that was another important perspective that we tried to bring to the book.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you think about, and kind of, if you were to ask Andy and I, who is this book for? It's really, to your point, Andy, it's for any team or individual that has a customer, but it also is for a range of teams and sort of where they lie in terms of their maturity around this practice of listening to your customers. There are some teams that are very early on in their phase, early phases of doing this. And so showing them a couple ways to actually build some traction around this, build momentum, start to show the value to the business. Those are all things that are included in the book. And then for those that are further along in their journey, being able to highlight some of the best practices of how do you do this at scale? How do you build a real operation around it? That's also covered in the book as well. So it's really for a very wide audience in terms of who this book is relevant for.
Yeah, I think one of the things we just to kind of add on that, I think one of the things we really tried to balance was this idea that a lot of industries, when they sort of emerge, you have a group of early adopters and experts and practitioners around doing something, and then everyone else is trying to figure like, how do I interact with that? And I think that's sort of a big part of the surface area of the book is this idea that there are world class experts that know how to do this kind of feedback research and understand users. There's a whole industry, if you're not familiar, on user experience testing and UX research. And those folks very often are now getting embedded with teams, and they're trying to be like, how do I then work with these teams? How do we all come together and work on these things? Not everybody's going to be a dedicated practitioner, but the learnings that come out of that, how do those scale across an organization? How do we all get aligned on the things we're hearing in the market about our products? And so I thought that was a really interesting focus area in the book as well. Sort of this idea of how do people like gather around these insights and collaborate around them and scale them to really change how a company operates.
Yeah, I think what's interesting too is sort of like moving from a place where there are, people who are very well trained in doing these types of activities, collecting this information, then finding ways to sort of bring the rest of the team or organization along, like you mentioned, Andy. And so we have sort of a vision for the future of what we think this looks like in the next, 5, 10, 15 years. And that's really how we kick the book off. So perhaps we can jump into the preface and just read. I'd say it's probably about a 5-minute excerpt from the preface and how we tee up the book. What do you think, Andy?
I think it'd be great. Let's dive in. We'll do a little bit of a virtual book tour reading and go from there. So I'll kick us off, and we'll walk through. This is the preface to User Tested. Imagine you sit down to your annual company meeting, and before the CEO even speaks, you're captivated by a video of your very own customers talking about how much they love the experiences you provide and suggestions on how to make the experiences better.
And imagine your company launches a new product and everyone at your company has access to customer feedback through a shared Slack channel. And in the channel, you can watch real customers using the new product and sharing their perspectives.
Anytime you'd like, you're given the opportunity to connect with customers yourself. You can ask their opinions and get their input on any aspect of your work quickly and easily.
And your organization has an internal app that streams curated videos of customers using the experiences you provide. Employees can subscribe to these channels, which include the most watched customer videos, feedback from specific customer segments, such as top spenders, and a competitive intelligence channel.
Your customers can opt in or volunteer to provide these rich perspectives and freely do so because they're invested in the experience you provide and want to make it better.
Once a month, you're asked to weigh in on what customer segments should be tested or which questions should be asked when customer perspectives are gathered. For example, you get to upvote competitive testing or downvote testing of a new ad campaign, depending on what will help you the most.
You get to the office in the morning, grab a cup of coffee in the kitchen, and you're immediately enthralled by a video of a customer on a flat screen above the coffee maker. You get to watch a real customer as they view and react to a recently launched marketing campaign.
And every Friday, you get an alert on your phone reminding you to watch this week's most commented on video of a customer using one of your competitors' experiences.
And imagine this is all done in an effort to create a company wide shared understanding of who your customers are as human beings, not data points. So you can make better, more empathetic decisions. You can bring humanity into the business. And so you can do it in a way that enables everyone to build a true and meaningful connection to customers they serve. This shared understanding ultimately helps people at your company act with more urgency and with the needs of the customer infusing every discussion, activity, and decision. And not only is there a shared understanding, but there's also a shared desire to augment that understanding so the business can continually learn and improve upon the experiences it provides. But this is not how businesses have traditionally operated. For far too long, we've relied on understanding our customers, who they are, what they do, what they need, in the form of big data, analytics, and surveys. And while this information is valuable, it's incomplete. We're missing a critical dimension. We're missing the human perspective.
What's it like to actually be my customer? What's it like to see the world through their eyes? Walmart founder Sam Walton is famous for walking the aisles at his stores to get an on the ground look at his customers and how his business operated. But most teams don't have access to this perspective today. That has to change. We're living in an age where customers are in control, yet we're simultaneously losing touch with them. As the world continues to digitally transform at light speed and tech continues to physically separate us from our customers, the divide between our teams and the customers we serve will continue to grow. So what do? How do we fill this gap? The answer is simple. We need to bring authentic customer perspectives back into key decisions. We need to pair the myriads of data we have at our fingertips with the literal voice of the customer. We need to connect with our customers human to human so we can make decisions that deliver better experiences. We need human insight.
So, what to expect from this book? We've structured this book to be as approachable and pragmatic as possible. Part one offers some background on how businesses became obsessed with numbers, stopped talking to customers, and why this trend can't persist. It is illustrated with plenty of great case studies and examples.
Part two is about the basics of capturing human insight through the practice of user testing, including how to find the right people, how to ask the right questions, how to make sense of what you capture, how to build a shared understanding, and how to take action based on your learnings.
Part three is a detailed playbook that walks you through a wide variety of ways to collect human insight and how they can be pulled into various parts of your business, including marketing efforts, product development, and beyond.
And part four is about spurring that all important culture change within your organization to incorporate human insight everywhere and all the time.
Our hope is that in reading this book, you'll help us build a better, brighter, customer focused future. It'll be one where companies pull human insight into their everyday work and decision making organically and consistently.
And that's the future we envision, and it's well within reach right now. All we have to do is commit to deepening our understanding of our customers by truly observing and listening to what they're telling us and using that to make well-informed, customer-centric decisions. It's difficult to predict the technologies and experiences that will emerge in the coming years, but one thing is certain. Human insight is the key to staying connected to our customers in the experience economy. So that wraps up the preface. Hopefully, we've hooked you enough to be interested to either order a copy of the book or perhaps even download a free chapter. And we'll be sharing a link to do so in the chat. Before we move on to a few more topics, we just want to make sure that we take a moment to thank the people and the customers and the companies that included their case studies in the book. As Andy mentioned, part of the book is really dedicated to all the different use cases that you can do with the practice of user testing. And for each of those use cases, we actually have highlighted an example of a customer who has done that use case, learned something interesting, made a decision, and tracked the impact of that learning. So, the book is meant to be very sort of pragmatic and actionable with lots of examples. And of course, we want to thank all of the companies and customers that allowed us to use those examples to help bring this concept of human insight to life.
It really is a great set of customers. I mean, there's large and small, different kinds of departments, just some amazing brands and companies, and frankly, thought leaders, people who have thought about how to put this in practice and scale it in their organization. So I agree. I think the case studies really bring the examples to light and make them real.
Yes, absolutely. So this was our first portion of our virtual book tour. Thank you for joining us again. Feel free to chat in if you have any questions or put them, on the post later on, and we can get back to you on them. We have a few more events coming up to get to talk a little bit more about what's in the book. Andy, do you want to share who we have coming up?
Yeah, we've got a great group of folks joining us to talk about the book and what's in the book. So our upcoming guest, we have Jim Callback is going to be on Friday, so coming up this week. On We have Ian Roberts, the COO of IDEO, is going to be on February 8th. And so I think that's going to be great. I'm really going to enjoy having that conversation with Ian. He's got some amazing perspectives, obviously being at IDEO on customer-centered design. And then Nick Mehta, the CEO of Gainsight, is going to join us on Valentine's Day, February 14th. We're going to be talking to Nick, a person in the SaaS community I love. So happy to spend part of my Valentine's Day with Nick. But it's going to be really great to get to talk to some of these really customer-centered and design-centered leaders about why it's so important to build these kind of experiences, but also the role that we hope the user-tested book plays in sort of furthering that conversation and sort of getting people involved in the practice.
Yeah, so Andy's going to be speaking with Ian and Nick, and then I have my conversation with Jim on Friday. And Jim, you may know him. He is also an author. He's written some books on the jobs to be done framework, as well as customer journey mapping. And he's currently the chief evangelist at Mural. And he reviewed the manuscript with us and had some comments and feedback. And we're going to walk through some of the pivotal feedback he provided to sort of help guide and shape how the book ended up, to be fair. So I'm really excited to have him on Friday, along with the other guests that Andy mentioned.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting. It's a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, not only of our topic, but of like what it's like to write a book like this and the kind of questions that you go through and the thoughts that you have. So yeah, I think that'll be a really interesting one.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. We hope to see you at an upcoming LinkedIn Live to cover some more topics and do deeper dives into the book.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone.